Rob Vanstone joining us. Rob, I had thought the breaking news out of Rider Nation today was that Rob Vanstone was starting the Regina chapter of the Denver Broncos fan club and would be looking after all Super Bowl celebrations and parades going forward in the Saskatchewan local, in the 306.
There's a few of us. Dale Laird, former Rough Rider equipment manager, he was with the 1966 team that won the Grey Cup. And when the Broncos won their first Super Bowl in 1998, Dale drove from Regina to Denver just to watch the game with Bronco fans. And he brought me back a copy of the Denver Post the next day. Like there's a few of us, but I think I'm one of the older ones.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap on NFL and your hate for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. But let's start with the news out of Rider Nation today. Ajou Ajou released to pursue an NFL opportunity, and we find out it's with the Indianapolis Colts. Was this on your radar? Did you know about this? Is this just as big a shock and surprise as to the rest of us in Rider Nation?
There have been rumblings during the season, in fact, early last season, when he started off so well and made such an instant impression. And there was talk that the NFL might be one of those players the NFL is eyeballing because of his measurables, his skill, just everything. And so I wasn't entirely surprised. I kind of thought the NFL cycle may have exhausted itself after Trevor Reed signed with Minnesota. I thought, okay, that's probably the extent of the departures. So maybe the timing of this surprised me more than the actual transaction.
Now, we did know that he had workouts with Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, and your Denver Broncos. And I had thought, just from a coaching standpoint and a quarterback standpoint, but I didn't know the depth in receivers. Like Bo Nix and Sean Payton, if I'm a receiver, that's probably a pretty good place to end up. We didn't know enough about Indianapolis. We knew that their quarterback, Anthony Richardson, quit and it took himself out of a game. He'd be making headlines for all the wrong reasons. And that in Pittsburgh, with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, a bit of a quarterback, carousel that's kind of unsettled. Do you know much about this situation in Indianapolis that he's going to? Do they need receivers or a guy like him that legitimately could have a chance to make the club?
I think Indianapolis needs everything, coming off the kind of season they had. I'm not sure of the relative needs, of one team compared to another. A part of it may have been the contact nature of the contract too. Was there upfront money offered? If so, if there were multiple teams that offered him, and I don't know that, but if he had a choice, did the upfront money dictate the decision? I think Indianapolis is a pretty good situation to go into because of the way things are. I think there's going to be a bit of a retooling. There has to be there. And this might be a good time to be at sort of the forefront of that, as opposed to walking into an established situation where it might be tougher to wedge yourself in.
We were just chatting about this when CFL players do get an opportunity to go down south to the NFL. For me, I always hope that they're getting a legitimate shot and that they crack a roster and, you know what, hey, we were happy to know you, and if you do end up back, hey, it's all good. There's not a lot of examples for that. Sometimes people go and they just end up being training camp bodies, or, they may play the preseason and don't make the final cut, and then if they do end up back here, sometimes it doesn't work. On the Ajou Ajou front, to me, does it seem like he was able to glide down the field no matter what route he was running and managed to always kind of get himself open?
Yeah, even in training camp, you noticed it, and right from the outset. His stride is so impressive. At 6'3", he's an impressive target, and because of the way things unfolded, Clemson, post-Clemson, I think those were some of the reasons that he dropped to the 7th round of the draft. But there was. At one point, he was a highly coveted player when Clemson recruited him. So there was always that part of his resume that I think was going to intrigue people. And once he started showing in the pro ranks that, yeah, he was still the same player that Clemson made a priority of recruiting, then the antenna go up. And that's clearly what happened south of the border.
I mean, that Arquel Armstead story of how he kind of got discovered because of COVID and all that, how he ended up in the CFL, it's another crazy one. Always a good football player, but a lot of situation around them changes, which for some people, like when and I remember this, when he got drafted in the 7th round, when, Rob, realistically, a 7th round draft pick, what are the chances that, that ever turns out to anything, let alone he comes in, the games he does play, has a great season, ends up off to the NFL. I think it's a great story. And the other thing, too, is he's got a personality and that smile that lights up a room. And some of the content he was doing during the Grey Cup, I mean, I think he's got a lot of options outside of football, whatever those choices. The other big news out of Rider Nation today, Trevon Tate signs a 1-year extension, penciled in to be the left tackle. I had said earlier in the show, the situation last year exposed the fact that Jeremy O'Day and Kyle Carson were able to scout and bring in some really good talent. Corey Mason, Edwin Harrison were able to coach up this talent where they were able to plug and play. Now we're in a situation saying the worst case scenario happened and we survived. Everything went wrong injury-wise on the O-line. But now we have all this talent identified. Now maybe we can look at other areas. At the time, it wasn't fun, but do you think what happened with the O-line last year has kind of set the Riders up for success, maybe unintended here, going into 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's as much guesswork as there would have been, say, a year ago when the left tackle job was up for grabs and nobody was really proven who was auditioning for that position. And that turned out to be Trevor Reed, and look what a success that was. I think Paul Jones, also the Roughriders assistant GM, has been instrumental in finding a lot of talent south of the border too. But I mean, Trevion Tate started at left tackle for the final 3 quarters of the Western semifinal after Trevor Reed got hurt, and played left tackle in the Western final. So Jacob Brammer, people have seen what he can do. Also, Jermarcus Hardrick will be coming back from injury in 2025. So that should take care of the right tackle situation quite nicely. There's, Nick Jones played well when he was called upon. You can put Logan Ferland seemingly anywhere.
Yeah,
so
you can put him anywhere.
There's never a good time to lose your left tackle, especially somebody who looked like such a cornerstone and allowed only 1 sack all year in his first year of 3-down football. But if it were to happen, I think this is the best situation you could hope for, having a pretty good read on the people who would at least be first in line as the successor.
Yeah, it's funny what a difference a year makes. Last year, all it was question mark, question mark, question mark. And so now my thing is now you kind of know what you've got offensive line. Maybe you change your free agent strategy or how you're going to draft, and maybe you go after, because last year, and Colson and I were talking about this earlier in the show, when there was one injury in the secondary, a lot of pieces had to move around to keep consistent. Now, maybe now you can go after some of those pieces so you're as rock solid there as you are everywhere else. It'll be interesting to see. Are you excited, Rob, that the Combine is coming to Regina and that we're going to get a chance to maybe see some future riders and obviously some future CFL stars here in our own city?
That is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that. I've kind of immersed myself more in pre-draft stuff now that I've joined the Roughriders, and I pay a lot more attention to it. And I was just going through some details today. The CFL Scouting Bureau announced their winter rankings. So I was inputting those and Googling those and trying to find some details. So to actually see some of these faces in front of me and have a chance to talk to some of these players, I think that's going to be really cool. It's a great year for Regina when you look at the Combine being here, and then on November 24th, the Vanier Cup being here.
Yeah. Curtis Rourke, ranked number 1. That's not a surprise. Do you think I think he if he does not get drafted in the NFL, he will sign a free agent deal immediately before the draft is over. Do you think he is in any sort of CFL training camp next season, no matter who drafts him?
I wouldn't really be surprised when you consider how high up he was in Heisman Trophy voting. I think he was ninth. You would think that if he isn't drafted, like you said, there will be opportunities for him south of the border. I wouldn't be surprised if a CFL team picked him to get the first dibs. I don't know at what point in the draft that had happened, but it's not uncommon for a team, once you get to even the fourth round, to say, you know what, we're going to secure his rights on the chance. If we have to wait 2 or 3 years and we get this, it's a lottery win, and it's not a huge expenditure. So, I mean, I would be pretty sure that he would be drafted, but I think there's a very good chance of him going to NFL camp, and if it doesn't work out there, I think there would probably be other options for him as well. He's just accomplished so much south of the border.
Okay, so if you take Curtis Rourke out of the equation, who are a couple of names, if CFL fans haven't done a deep dive yet, as far as draft prospects for this year? Like, what in the coming weeks we're going to know a lot more, and it's going to be commonplace, but who are and where are they? Because there's a lot of good Canadian talent that plays at American colleges that we may just not realize, because some people don't have the SEC package on their cable or want to watch a game on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock to know that, oh, that guy there is from Collingwood, Ontario, and he is a dominant defensive end playing for Mississippi State.
The trick of it is always looking at this list and trying to decide how far down you go before players are likely to end up in the CFL first before the NFL, and that influences some of the drafting. But, Eric Iomanner, a wide receiver out of Stanford, he caught 63 passes last year. He has a pretty good chance he's going to go in the NFL draft, but he's third overall in the winter rankings. That's really, when you look at a player such as that who started at a big-time university, I think that's pretty interesting. Taylor Elgersma, quarterback at Wilfrid Laurier, he wasn't on the summer rankings or the fall rankings, but he's now 20th, and he's really impressed people with his physical attributes. He's 6'6", 6'5", 6'6", I think, and he's really turned some heads and impressed teams in terms of interviews and in terms of just his performance on the field. And so I think that's a player it's really going to be interesting to pay attention to at the combine. You'll be talking about Canadian quarterbacks with Curtis Rourke, but I am really intrigued with this one.
We're chatting with Rob Vanstone of the Saskatchewan Roughriders on the Western Pizza guest hotline. Hey, don't forget Western Pizza with orders over $25, free delivery. And really, you don't want to cook tonight. You probably don't want to go get it either. Just have it dropped off right at the front door. Kids will be happy for at least an hour to 45 minutes. If they're anything like our kids, you can't stretch that to 2 hours anymore, let alone the whole night. Anyways, let's shift gears here. NFL, it's championship weekend. A lot of us are caught up in, and rightfully so, the Cinderella story that is turning out to be Jayden Daniels. Now, if you're paying attention, and not just to the past 4 to 5 weeks, Jayden Daniels has been quietly doing this since late September, being quiet, under the radar, overachieving quarterback in the NFL. In your opinion, Rob, is he a guy that's very easy to like when you watch what he's been doing magically to win these football games?
It really is a nice story, and after so many years of being mediocre or worse, the Washington team's finally been able to get it right, and just to see the type of game he had and against such a formidable opponent, that was such an impressive showing. And you wonder 2, 3, 4, 10 years down the road what kind of player he's going to be, the way he comes in and just absolutely sparkles as a rookie. That's really an amazing show. Now, how far does it go after that? To be determined this weekend.
I get it. He's going to come up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who have a really good defense, and what are they, 12-0 with Jalen? No, why do I blank out on this? The whole the Edwards situation to me was was around Thanksgiving, and when Darian was on with us one day, he said, Jaden Daniels, he goes, I like him. He's got it all. Just watch. And it was kind of a throwaway comment after probably a 10 to 15 minute segment or whatever, kind of right at the end. And then ever since that, I've kind of paid attention. And I would think Darian Durant, being one pretty good quarterback, knows what to look for in other quarterbacks. And he said he was seeing some stuff that maybe other people weren't seeing at the time, but has proved true to see. What do you make against Nick Sirianni and the Eagles this weekend? I think out of the two games, I think Washington has a chance to. Was beaten by Duke last Saturday. Holy smokes! The final score was 81-63. I think that Washington has a chance to beat the Eagles because I don't think the Eagles have played their best football or a complete game lately. Where Washington has had to, even through the wild card round, play good team football.
The one thing that. And there's no secret here. One thing that the Washington Commanders are going to have to do is stop Saquon Barkley. And
yes.
although it was quite the victory last week, Washington still showed that one of the issues that Dan Campbell was facing is while you ran the ball pretty effectively when you did run it, why didn't you run it more? And so that vulnerability having been shown or exposed, what if the run defense doesn't improve against Saquon Barkley, and suddenly they're facing him for 25 carries a game after those two long-distance touchdown runs last week? I mean, he is such a formidable weapon, and the degree to which the run game can be neutralized will pretty much determine the course of that game.
Well, the one thing, now keep in mind, like a lot of us, when we make predictions on Wednesdays, we could be fools by Sundays. Dan Quinn has seen Saquon Barkley for the past 4 years with the Giants, a year here, if my math is correct, when he was defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. So there is times we would have had to scheme up. Now, keep in mind, the offensive line with the Giants is different than it is with the Eagles. And I would say that the Eagles' offensive line is better than the Giants ever was. But the whole Saquon Barkley thing is not new to Dan Quinn. So if there is an advantage there. As to a coach that maybe has never seen Saquon Barkley and is going to be facing them for the first time, theoretically. So there is that. I don't know. Jalen Hurts, it just seems that if you're waiting till the fourth quarter to target A.J. Brown and get him his first or second catch, it may be too late. I like Devonta Smith. They got a lot of really nice pieces, but Washington could be the team of destiny. And we saw it last week with Detroit. I didn't think that Detroit was going to lose, and then here comes Washington, and you're like, okay. All right, let's jump to that other game. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. First of all, last weekend against Houston, was the refereeing egregious in how it was favored or tilted towards Kansas City?
I'm never going to go so far as to suggest that a referee is favoring somebody. I leave that for professional wrestling. I think people across football are so cautious about any hit to a quarterback, and it just so happens that some of the hits on Patrick Mahomes have been flagged, and there's virtually zero tolerance, and it's a split second. I will never buy for a second that there's an institutional bias for or against a team. Have there been some calls that you could question? Absolutely. Was there a bit of flop on the sidelines last week? Undeniably. They are getting a lot of calls going their way, but guess what? I think when you're good or great, sometimes you make your own luck. And
yes.
So it's just beyond me that any official would go into games with sort of a predisposition to look favorably upon one team or look the other way. I think it's just been recurrent, but I just don't think there's anything sinister behind it.
I think for a lot of us, we like the Buffalo Bills. We like what they've done. We like Josh Allen. He could be the MVP of the NFL this year. He plays the game the right way. He plays tough. He's not looking for shortcuts. He doesn't like to make excuses. But for him to cement his legacy as Josh Allen and really put his stamp in the record books, he needs to, first of all, beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Because let's say Houston would have won last week and Buffalo would have won. Well, you're backdooring. You got to win, but you need to beat. To be the man, you got to beat the man. Sorry, Ric Flair. I'm stealing a line. Woo!
Two wrestling references in this segment now.
And there's always room for more. But do you agree? For him to cement his legacy, they have to win a Super Bowl. And they got to beat Kansas City somewhere along the way. Because another great season that stops with a loss to Kansas City, sooner or later, you're just going to run out of chances. Yeah,
I mean, you think, especially in a salary cap league, you figure that at some point Kansas City's going to have to retool, but it just never seems to be that way. So you're going to have to go there and win the belt. Does that count as a third wrestling reference? That's just the way it is unfolding. It's not markedly different than what it was when the Patriots were on top. Or in the CFL, you look at the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and that's likely where you're going to have to go to get to the, or that's what you're going to have to go through and dethrone. And can it be done? Kansas City hasn't been dominant this year, although the record has been. There's a lot of games have been one-score games, single-digit deficits. So I think I think they've shown that they can be had. I mean, Denver took them down to the last play, and a field goal was blocked. So they've had some good luck on their side, and this Kansas City team might be more susceptible than some of the other ones. But good luck to anyone that plays them on a Sunday with the Super Bowl berth at stake, because they know this drill, and it's a different offense. I mean, Patrick Mahomes isn't the 50 touchdown pass gunslinger that he was earlier in his career. He's had to tailor his game. The receiving core isn't as dominant as it was. It's a different Kansas City team than the ones that were on the field earlier in Patrick Mahomes' career, but he can still make that play, that improbable throw, that weird arm angle completion while falling to the ground at the right time. So, but Josh Allen also has that ability too. So, I'd kind of like to see it. I grew up watching the Broncos, and they lost 4 Super Bowls before they won 1. So I always empathize with teams in that situation and fans who have been through that. So every year, even when the Broncos are out of it, I kind of hope for Minnesota. I kind of hope for the Buffalo Bills. Hope Detroit finally wins one, etc. But I'm not as anti-Chiefs as I used to be, and there aren't any people on that team who aren't likable. So I have to reform my ways a bit. It seems like the offense, maybe they're not scoring the 50 touchdowns anymore, but they still know how to do just enough when it matters the most. And Andy Reid can dial up a play at the right time. And the other thing too is Chris Jones and that Kansas City defense. They haven't missed a step. And here's what I'm hoping for on Sunday. 2 good games. And to me, I don't mind the Chiefs. They're the Darth Vaders. They're the bad guys. They're the New England Patriots. They're the team that everybody loves to hate because they win. But until somebody knocks them off, and they're still the champions. So it's going to be great. Rob, thank you as always for taking some time. We appreciate it. Rob Vanstone